Good evening, and welcome once again to the Shadow Gallery. I am, as always, your host, James Donnelly. And it's Monday night. We're back in full force and full swing to bring you yet another edition of New Comics, bitches! So, yes, this was another week where I thought I might break this up into two segments, but I'm going to try and get through some of the stuff as quickly as I possibly can, only because I just want to try and make things a little bit more concise. Although there is some comic news that I do want to talk about. Damn it. Sorry, the heat just turned on here, and I don't know why. It's not that cold, but I'm sweating. Smells like victory. Anyway, so I'm sure that you all by now have heard the awful, abysmal, horrifying news that yes, apparently, I don't know, the New York Times, the New York Post, one of the New York papers spoiled what's coming up in this week's Batman Incorporated, written by Grant Morrison. And that is indeed, apparently, according to what has been said, that that Damian Wayne is going to die. Now, I'm not quite so much of two minds about this. I am partially of more one mind than any other. First of which is Grant Morrison, fuck you. But I understand also that, yes, you know, this is kind of your character, if you will, and, you know, you brought him into this world, and yes, you've had this plan for years and years to kill him. But now just seems like a really dickish time to do it. Now, of course, this is Grant Morrison leaving Batman for hopefully all of eternity. You know me, you know that I am very, very, very nonplussed by all of the Batman work that he's done. I can't enjoy any of it. I can't get into any of it. Just his whole kind of hallucinatory madness that this book is just that, you know, his various Bat books have just been almost embarrassing at certain points in time, and at their best, they are mildly entertaining. And at their worst, they're anathema. So, anyway, it just, now that, you know, we've had, with the New 52, we've gotten these, at least to me, that's really when I started getting into Damian Wayne as a character, because I thought just under the auspices of Grant Morrison, he was just a little prick. And now that we've had some more FaceTime with him, thanks to Peter Tomasi, I think that he's a really vital character, and that killing him is a horrific mistake for this book to make, now that it's this far on, that we've gotten this many years to get used to him being around, to start to enjoy what his character brings to the table, and ultimately to start to really like him as a character. So I don't know how they plan on killing Bruce Wayne's son, but I mean, I can only imagine that things are going to get darker from here going forward. I mean, Death of the Family is incredibly dark, but I mean, you know, just the character of Bruce Wayne, I mean, you know, if we thought that he was bad during, post-death in the Family and a lonely place of dying, you know, this is going to be a lot worse, in my opinion, because this is actually his son, and someone that he is just really beginning to understand is his son, and really beginning to love like a son. So that to me is just a huge fuck you to a lot of us people who have become fans of Damian over the years. And just, it's again, one of those things, it's like, just because you can doesn't necessarily preclude that you should. And I think that that's something Grant Morrison has never taken to heart. He's never done the thing that his, you know, that is necessarily the right thing to do. And this is, I mean, I'm going back through all of his works, you know, to Arkham Asylum, to Animal Man, to Doom Patrol. He seems to take the path of most resistance, which in its own stupid way is kind of admirable, but I guess but the fallout of it is abysmal. So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to go. I don't know how it's going to shape up. I'm not going to be buying that issue. I might read it just to see what happens, because it obviously is going to end up hanging over the Batman titles. But whatever, you know. I mean, it's like, I don't want to get too worked up over it, but at the same time, you know, it's hard not to, because, you know, I've definitely really come to enjoy Damian Wayne being around. So, whatever. Let's get on to comics this week. We're going to start with Marvel, in which that is the most of this week by far. And we're going to start with Alpha, Big Time, #1. So this is Joshua Hale Fialkoff's and Nuno Platti's attempt to bring a much criticized and deserving of its criticism character, and give him more life, give him more vitality, and give him really a story of his own. Because under the auspices of Dan Slott, he seemed to just kind of be created to be a dick. You know, to be the guy who gets the big power and then, you know, none of the responsibility and... So I didn't care for the Alpha storyline at all, but once I heard that Fialkoff was going to be writing this, I'm like, okay, well, I have to get this. And guess what? It's a really, really good book. Because basically what we have here is that we have this continuation of Andy McGuire's story. You know, he's back amongst the losers at his high school, you know, in the, you know, kind of at the losers table, even, you know, and he kind of reminisces about when he was at the, you know, kind of the cool kids table, and, you know, he's getting, you know, kind of his ass handed to him every other day by, you know, some of the big jocks in school now that he is a loser again. Which just seems to be just kind of a dangerous thing to fuck with, because, you know, I mean, who knows if his powers have gone away completely. He does have a nice zinger that he throws in the face of one of the big jocks, but of course this gets him a tremendous knee to the nuts. And he tries to throw a punch, and of course it's just like, you know, it's nothing. But then here we have... What's going on here is that he's no longer dealing with Peter Parker as his mentor. He's dealing with Octo Peter. He's dealing with Otto Peter. And in this issue, he is definitely much more Otto than Peter. Because he does pick him up and take him back to Horizon Labs and basically says, look, I screwed up. I'm not going to be doing... you know, any more of this. You know, I think that my, that you were, you know, a terrible mistake, that I should have given more attention to, should have paid more respect to the powers that you wield, and I will do what I can to fix you. And so he says to Andy, he says, with great power comes great opportunity. Basically you know, kind of Octo Spidey puts him through some of the paces, and, you know, he does all this, you know, just really almost sadistic shit to him in some of these tests, and then says, you know what, you've grown a lot as a human being. I think you've grown a lot as, as someone who can be a hero, who can be responsible for others' lives, and to take the opportunity that gives you to be a hero. And so he gives him back 10% of his powers. He still is, he has flight, he has invulnerability, he has, telekinesis, he has energy projection, energy absorption, all the powers that he has, but just, it's obviously it's just 10%, but 10% is definitely enough. And then of course, Alpha takes off, but he has to kind of think of a new name because Alpha is definitely is a bad word around New York. And basically, he goes off to be a hero again, and this time he decides to give himself a little mask that he generates with his own energy abilities. But of course, everybody still recognizes him, and he does a bit of the hero thing, and of course, Ock is there, kind of in the background. Octospidey, whatever you want to call him, is in the background there, almost kind of has some kind of mustache twirling moments here, because he again views the Parker particles as something that he needs to fix, something that that Parker did not do very well. So hence, this is why, at least one of the reasons why, he's giving Alpha his abilities back. But again, this kind of all does boil down to him kind of almost dropping a bomb in the middle of this, on New York City. And he does, and like I said, he does a bit of the hero thing, and this has both hilarious and very disastrous consequences, because he still doesn't know the extent of his own power as he tries to, well, not tries to, but he does fight off a mugger, but certainly not in the way that even he expected. And he just knows that he's going to be in a lot of trouble for this. I mean, it was like one of those holy shit moments where it's like, wow, how is this going to go forward? I mean, I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed this issue. Of course, I mean, this is not just my kind of devout love of everything that Fialkov does, but I mean, he does write a pretty brilliant comic. I mean, he knows how to write comics really, really well. And one of the things that he does so well in this issue is that he's given us a character that was so incredibly unlikable before. And he kind of brings him more, he kind of lifts him out of the, kind of like the fan hatred gutter, if you will, and kind of gives us a glimpse, gives us some more insight into what his life is like and how important it was for him to be Alpha, and how, of course, unimportant he is now that Alpha, that the Alpha powers are gone, but also to, how does one person with superpowers and no real training or experience or kind of a guiding hand, even though, Octospidey is kind of a guiding hand, but really not at the same time, how does one deal with the ethics of being, of being a superhero and using your abilities on normal people? Because Alpha is someone who clearly needs a kind of an Alpha class, an Omega level villain to fight, but he's just trying to take care of street crime. So this is why the ending that happens. And I liked, one of the other things that I also liked was that basically is that how we were unencumbered by Peter in this issue. We have no Ghost Peter in the Octo-Spidey moments. It's basically just, he is, you know, he's being Peter, but not being Peter. He's definitely, the Otto personality is definitely much more dominant here, and, you know, Fialkov writes him very wisely that way, without the trapping of having the constant conscience moments that that have been working on Superior Spider-Man, and, you know, have been kind of working on Superior Spider-Man. Nuno Platti's art is really terrific. It's very nice and quirky and dynamic. So I have to give this book a 4.5 out of 5. I mean, I was really impressed with this. I did not necessarily go into this thinking I would like it a lot. I thought, well, you know, it's Fialkov writing it, so I'm bound to like some of it. And it is. I mean, there's some really funny stuff that happens in this book, and there's some great dialogue. There's some really nice character moments, but, you know, it ends up not being so funny at the end. But to take this trip for whatever the 5 issues that it's going to be going for, I'm on board for that. So, I mean, you know, you kind of had me when you said, okay, well, Josh Fialkov's going to be writing this. I'm like, okay, I'm on board. As long as the first issue doesn't, you know, really, again, kind of get me hating Andy Maguire, and it didn't. I didn't hate him. I actually kind of empathized with him and felt like, okay, well, I mean, yeah, he's kind of an idiot, but I mean, he's just kind of a normal guy. You know, he's not a big brain, and that's just, I think, one of the things that I think that Fialkov understands better than maybe Slott did. So, good for you, Josh. Again, another really terrific comic book by him. Superior Spider-Man number 4. So basically we have here, really the focus is that we have 2 stories going on here. One of them is that basically Octo-Spidey, you know, he has all of his bots going everywhere, and he's gaining kind of new respect even amongst the criminals. Even the criminals see him and they're just like, okay, forget it, I'm done. Might as well just surrender now. Then we have him going to Aunt May's physical therapy, because that's how important she is to him, both as Otto and as Peter. And, you know, the physical therapist is like, well, you know, it's not a good idea to get her hopes up about being able to walk without a cane again. And, you know, Otto's like, well, you know, we'll see about that kind of thing. He goes right back to Horizon. He gets to work, and of course he makes this kind of implant that will allow, that can literally change the world for millions of people. And someone, I don't know, and Max Modell and Uatu are both there in the room as he introduces this device, and, you know, they address him as Mr. Parker, or they address him as Peter, and he says, you know, that's Dr. Peter Parker to you. And, you know, Max says, hey, don't pad your resume here. You know, you're not a doctor. You know, you're Mr. Peter Parker. And then, of course, this sets off, he's accessing his memories, and Peter, you know, Ghost Peter is there saying, you're not going to like what you find there, Doc. And, of course, he sees that he is basically 1 credit short in a thesis away from getting his doctorate. So Doc Ock is just now Ock. He's not a doctor anymore. So he casts aside this, you know, again, this monumental, you know, world-changing device, and immediately re-enrolls in, you know, pulls a Thornton Mellon, essentially, goes back to school. And, so he can get his doctorate. But at the same time, back at Ravencroft, Massacre, who we met during the, I think, the 2 or 3 issue No One Dies arc, which is honestly my favorite arc of all of Dan Slott's work as far as like the micro arcs were concerned. The whole kind of end of Big Time leading, that was like the Revenge of the Spider Slayers, that led into the No One Dies arc. And here we have Massacre, and he has broken out of Ravencroft, or he's about to anyway. And he has indeed killed Dr. Ashley Kafka, who is probably better off dead because, I mean, she kind of used up most of her, I would think, most of her kind of expertise during the 90s, during like the Clone Saga and with, Carnage and all that shit. So it's probably right that she dies now. So Massacre is out. This is a man who has no regard about life whatsoever. Anyone can live or die, but there is something, he's like a grade A psychotic, though, is that he has zero regard for life and is willing to do anything to prove how little regard he has for life. And this then, and then we have Peter at college. He gets a call for Spider-Man from Jameson, so he comes to Ravencroft, and of course, there's, there are 8 people that were murdered in Massacre's escape, including Dr. Kafka. And, this is where basically Octo Spidey and Ghost Peter are both kind of like, oh shit, it's like, Peter's like, well, we've got to make sure that no one else, that no one else dies. And then, Ock kind of interrupts that and just kind of like push away Peter, if you will, and says, okay, I'm going to end this guy. That's it. Because this is a mistake that this guy was left alive. And it was a mistake that Parker made, so he has to solve it. And we have some more moments with Massacre, and then we have again, kind of a shocking finale moment here with the reemergence of, well, let's just call him the guy that used to be Peter Parker's greatest nemesis before Dan Slott got it in his head that Doc Ock should be his greatest nemesis. So aside from the things that this book got right, because there are some good moments that I've described here, where did it go wrong? I am really disappointed in Dan Slott here for one sequence. I mean, despite everything that, that he's done that has been obviously very offensive to a lot of Spider-Man fans, I've still been a pretty staunch supporter of this title. And I have to say, what he does in this issue, which is a sequence in which Massacre is at a fast food restaurant armed with a machine gun. Basically, this is the gist. Slott just took it too far. He just took it too far. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I will school you in what I call the die-hard rule of villainy. There are great villains and there are shit villains. And this has been demonstrated most perfectly in the first 2 Die Hard films. I'll tell you why. Because we have In the first Die Hard, we have Hans Gruber. Not arguably, there's no argument here. He is one of the great movie villains of all time. Of all time. Suave, sophisticated, smart, plans everything. Yes, he plans to kill a whole bunch of people, and that plan is thwarted. But, I mean, in actuality, who racks up a higher body count in that film? Hans Gruber or John McClane? I mean, of course, you know, it's always the hero's job to kill more than the bad guy. But, I mean, you have, you know, Hans Gruber kills Takagi, the two security guards, Ellis, but he had it coming, man. I mean, come on. And that's it. Those are the only guys, those are the only people that he kills. Again, like I said, he intends to kill more. But McClane does stop that. So we have, like I said, one of the great villains of movie history. Period. Done. Not the greatest, but certainly one of the greatest. And then we have Die Hard 2, Die Harder, which has Colonel Stewart, played by Bill Sadler, whose only real show of how much of a villain he is how many people he ends up killing along the way. That's lowest common denominator bullshit right there. Rennie Harlan directed that film. He did the same exact thing in Cliffhanger. He, you know, basically, you know, I'm going to show how bad the bad guys are just by their wanton destruction and total, just not sadism, but their total lack of just any kind of. I mean, they're basically like Massacre. The bad guys are just they just kill innocent people just to kill them. It's literally, there's no real reason behind it other than, well, I'm going to show how bad these bad guys are by killing a whole bunch of innocent people. And Rennie Harlan did it again in The Long Kiss Goodnight, in which there's a scene in a train station where his bad guys kill all of these innocent people as they're trying to kill Gina Davis and Samuel L. Jackson. So it was when we got to this moment in which the kid behind the counter hits the silent alarm, and you know, even and this was the part that I really had a problem with, because it felt like he was also that Slott was also trying to make a bit of a political statement here, because obviously he has been very vocal on Twitter about gun deaths and so on and so forth. And so he even says, you know, just to clarify before I do this, this gun did not kill anyone. This kid behind the counter did by disobeying me. So he guns down everybody in the fast food joint, probably about 20 people, but with the exception of a young mother and her baby, because he tends to use them as hostages. Again, this is lowest common denominator bullshit. Good villains are not effective because they just kill indiscriminately. Good villains are good villains because you give them character, you give them depth. Now, admittedly, Massacre is kind of a one-note character. Yes, he has no feeling about life or anything like that, but just to do it in this manner felt very stupid. It felt needlessly wanton in its cruelty, and just done for shock value more than anything else. So I mean, it was a Colonel Stewart moment, and it's awful, and it totally killed the issue for me. Almost anything that was good about it was completely wiped out. On the plus side, Giuseppe Camuncoli's art does look better than it has in the past. Again, it's better when he doesn't have Klaus Janson inking for him. But anyway, this was just, this at best was a 2 out of 5. Again, this, if there's any other moments like this in this book, I'm gonna drop it like a fucking brick, because all I felt like after I read this book was I just felt like shit. I felt this was totally unnecessary. It was totally just wrong. Everything about that moment destroyed, and almost, like I said, almost everything good that about this issue and about this series. It just really made me start thinking twice about Dan Slott. So, moving on to better things. Deadpool number 5. Again, we have Duggan, Posehn, and Tony Moore start the issue with a brilliant Mean Joe Green reference to that old Mean Joe Green commercial. I can't remember if it's for like Coke or something like that, or Pepsi, or Dr. What, I don't remember what the hell it was. But it was just such an awesome moment. When I think about it, I just start laughing. But basically, the book just steams forward full speed, with hilarity as Deadpool gets, teleported up into space by their kilt-wearing dark arts practitioner, or mystic arts practitioner, whatever you want to call him, to fight Reagan and space monkeys. And again, this is loaded with just great, jibes at, the former president, his love for jelly beans, his the mommy moments. And we do have this nice little death moment for him, which was reminiscent of Alien Resurrection, but again, I don't mind that. That's Alien Resurrection is one of those films that a lot of people hate. I happen to really enjoy, despite the fact that Joss Whedon himself has kind of disavowed his whole involvement from that film. I still think it's a really good it's a really good movie. But basically, they, and once that's wrapped up and he's done with Reagan and done with the Russian, nuke satellite that's up there, he has a little confab with Agent Preston, when suddenly LBJ and Washington attack. And here's where the book does make a pretty abrupt left turn from, almost constant humor to a surprisingly kind of heartbreaking and heartfelt moment in which basically Washington kills one of the characters. I'm not going to say who, but it was just like, wow, that hit me a lot harder than I expected to, because it's funny, I didn't even remember her name, but I loved, well, fuck it, it's Agent Preston, because I just said her, so that did kind of spoil it anyway, so sorry. It was just, I was really, I was really surprised by that, but Posehn and Duggan, really held it together and made the book, just made it terrific. And Tony Moore still just annihilating the art on this book. I mean, like I said, was not a big fan of Deadpool before, but boy, I'm a pretty big fan now. So I'm really loving what Duggan and Posehn and Tony Moore are doing on this book. So I hope that they keep it up. So 4.5 out of 5 for Deadpool number 5. Avengers number 6. We have, basically here, we have the, well, not origin, but since it really doesn't. Well, we kind of get an origin of both. We have our first exploration into Captain Universe and who the new Captain Universe is. We have Shang-Chi sitting with her, kind of letting her talk, but also he kind of practices kind of a guided meditation with her so that she can help to piece together who she was before. And we find out that her name is Tamara DeVoe, however that last name is pronounced in French. You know, it seems like her life was pretty rough before the events of this book happened. But when the event described in this book happened, I think it's neat how they do kind of parallel the beginning of the universe and the beginning of her life as Captain Universe. You know, as she emerges from this 10-year coma, or finds out that she was in a coma for 10 years and has no idea what happened in the incident that kind of kick-started this, which is with her little girl. And she keeps talking about that, you know, how the host is broken. And yes, there is something about Tamara that is definitely broken, considering what happens to her, or what happened to her. We also get a little interlude here of Octo-Spidey. We are now definitely seeing Octo-Spidey here. This is not Peter Parker Spider-Man. This is Octo-Spidey. He's starting to show through in this book, as well as he pilfers some of Cannonball's lousy, like macrobiotic food, and starts talking about the annoying teenagers, and even Tony is like, well, you have to be more specific than that. And so, but as Captain Universe kind of emerges from this guided meditation in a pretty, well, for her, terrifying way, but then becomes Captain Universe again. Because we see Tony has been working with Black Veil and trying to decipher the builder machine code that he speaks, and she basically is able to translate, correct Tony's translations. Not Black Veil. His name is Night Mask, and she gives him voice, and he starts talking about something called the White Event, and we just know that not only that is Captain Universe somehow tied to this, but it's big and it's bad. So this is again one of those world-ending threats that the Avengers fight so well. Again, the thing with Hickman is that with kind of these books, he kind of has, some issues are really on and some issues are kind of really off, and then some issues are brilliant, and then the issue that follows them up is kind of just meh. And that's exactly what's going on here, because last issue of Avengers was one of my books of the week. Number 5 was absolutely I thought it was just great. And this issue is it's good. It's a 3.5 out of 5, but I mean, nothing really, kind of, that had kind of the punch of number 5 happens in this book, despite that we have an interesting new character here with this, with who Captain Universe is, and why she likes pie. And again, Kubert's art is really good here, but it's, again, it seemed like it was more on in the last issue than it was here, but that happens. So again, 3.5 out of 5. I did like the last page that actually has a bit of the builder's code in it. I thought that was pretty neat. But other than that, like I said, it's good. there's nothing bad about it. It's just not great. It's just nothing really special. So it's, like I said, 3.5 out of 5. So on to our alternate dimension version of the Avengers, the Ultimates number 21. Here we have basically Nick Fury is Scorpio, is Nick Fury. You know, so white Nick Fury goes away and black Nick Fury comes back. And that he has not indeed sold out and is working the other side. You know, he's not working both sides against the middle. He was going undercover to, you know, infiltrate this Death's Head Hydra that is being formed around this Commander Crimson, which just, of course, you know, is appropriate. And she has this kind of, you know, the Death's Head gauntlet type of thing that she uses in this issue. But in the midst of this, of course, there's this big battle that erupts, of course, with, you know, Iron Patriot leading the charge, and of course, you know, Tony's, you know, sentient brain tumor, Anthony, is piloting the little wasps. So we have, you know, big battle, and everything seems to be resolved pretty quickly. But you know, Nick decides that he's not coming back, that he's going to actually remain off the grid, and that he's going to continue to kind of fight within the shadows with the other kind of AIM revolutionary that he met up with. It doesn't really, you know, is starting to see AIM for what it truly is. And that is not just, you know, anti-government, it's just, you know, an evil organization. And of course, you know, when he asks this woman's name, you know, she says, well, actually, it's Brand. Abigail Brand. So that was a nice little reveal. But then we go back to Thor and Sue Storm, and what they've been up to is that, you know, and why they've been transported to the place they've been transported to, which is, you know, in the midst of all this kind of chaotic fighting, and they see exactly what brought them there. So again, we have this, you know, this furthering of the, you know, the ultimate version of the Infinity Gauntlet. So I mean, I dug the reveal of this woman's name being Abigail Brand, and, you know, I loved, you know, Tony and Anthony, and, you know, just how kind of, you know, super patriotic Tony is with the Iron Patriot armor on, and you know, just, you know, there's a great throw out to Hulk Hogan's you know, like 1980s theme song, "I am a real American." I mean, it was just that was classic stuff. You know, Sam Humphries. The problem, though, with this issue is that he does tend to focus a little bit too much on the big battle stuff and less on the character stuff. And that's usually where the book is at its strongest, is when we do have more character moments. You know, because my favorite part of the previous issue was just Nick and who we now know as Abigail Brand are just kind of walking and talking, you know, just kind of almost this Aaron Sorkin kind of feel to it. Yeah, it didn't fall apart under its weight, but it didn't help. And Scott Eaton's art, again, it wasn't as bad as last issue, but it's still not great. You know, it's a 3.5 out of 5 again for this book as well, for Ultimates number 21. But it just, because it needs more oomph and less of the boom, you know. Indestructible Hulk number 4. Now, basically, we have Bruce Banner is kind of settling into his new digs, which is basically an old nuclear test site that has been abandoned. And he's, you know, we have him making his call to his mysterious contact, the person that's supposed to be kind of keeping him safe, and keeping all of this information that can really hurt, you know, S.H.I.E.L.D. and so on and so forth if they don't keep in touch every week. And he's getting to know his new team, his new assistants, so that, you know, again, with the motto of Hulk smashes, Banner builds. And they even have a piece of Uru metal. And, you know, and Banner takes this to, you know, to say, well, you know, there's a number of applications that this can have that can be tremendous, that could be greatly helpful to the world, and not just, you know, part of Thor's hammer. But almost immediately, he is called away by Maria Hill to go fight the Lemurians and Atuma. And of course, this means going underwater. So we have this great big underwater fight with the Hulk, and we have Rob, I think now 7.0, because I think even Banner says that he's smashed, like, you know, the 6 previous versions of him. And, you know, Rob also serves, because he ends up on a submersible version of the helicarrier called the Dreadnought. And you know, he also acts as a translator, and of course Hulk gets himself into actually pretty big trouble here. You know, something that, you know, he seems to not be able to quite fight his way out of, because this is the sea, and it's, you know, several tons of pressure are really, you know, going on him. And of course Atuma has, you know, we're assuming is, you know, he knows the seas a lot better than Hulk does, so. And of course, when Hulk is Hulk, Hulk does not have Banner's brain, really. So I guess the point of this issue is, you know, Mark Waid, he's a really smart writer, of course. But this just seemed, it just didn't hit all of its marks that the previous issues had. You know, it didn't seem like this was a really significant issue, because I think it just kind of really breezed over what I thought was the strongest part of the book, which was the meeting with the assistants, to get to the big undersea battle here. Again, this theme seems to be kind of recurring this week with a couple of different books. And again, you know, Leinil Yu's art is still problematic, but it's gotten better. I mean, certainly the underwater sequences are tremendous; they're done really well. But again, you know, 'cause it's so liney and so sketchy at points in time, it's just like. But you know, again, Mark Waid, you know, it's fun, it's clever, but like I said, it just doesn't have that snappy rhythms to this book that I think this book needs. So. This is, again, a 3.5 out of 5. Not terrible, but not great. So moving on to the independents, we're going to start with something I was really looking forward to, and that is the Shadow Year 1, #1. Now, this is Matt Wagner, not, you know, Garth Ennis or Victor Gischler. I shouldn't say Garth Ennis with that kind of tone, because I love Garth Ennis, but I just didn't love I liked his work on the first arc of The Shadow, but not, you know. But Matt Wagner, he's a guy that really gets the pulp characters much clearer. And basically we have, you know, the beginnings of Kent Allard's career as the Shadow. You know, we open up in Cambodia in 1929. You know, just all hell is breaking loose around in this little village, as you know, one of the locals is talking about this, you know, this madman with this mad laugh. You know, it's just kind of, you know, just dealing death all throughout the village to the evildoers that are there, and he himself gets, you know, single shot right between the eyes. And there's one kind of villager left who is recognized as Yinko, the Shadow of Doom, or as he actually calls himself the Shadow of Retribution, Yinko does. But he's, going through Cambodia to track down this, this evil peddler of vice known as the White Tiger. But the intelligence, if you will, that he receives from this villager indicates that he has already left here and has traveled abroad, probably to the United States. And so here and to New York City. So here we have, Kent Allard arriving in New York City I think the day after or 2 days after the big 1929 stock market crash. And he arrives as Lamont Cranston, the millionaire and big game hunter. And I don't know kind of where the big game hunter part comes from, but whatever. And there's this intrepid reporter whose name we do not know yet. I'm assuming that we'll end up finding out, and that it might be someone that is actually connected to the Shadow somehow, because that would actually be cool. But, in the meanwhile, we have Margot Lane. She is kind of... She's a gangster's moll, essentially. She is kind of being cast aside by this kind of mid-level gangster, pretty, not high up, but high enough. And this is someone who definitely likes Margot for basically her being a great piece of skirt. As he says so charmingly, but but he has to keep putting her up in these kind of swanky digs, and he's just kind of sick of it. So he's like, "Hey, here's the door, toots," and gives her a smack in the kisser to remember her by, or to remember him by, I should say. And as he's driving away, he gets this weird, moment where his mind is like, well, you can take over everything, in the city, and he kind of snaps out of it, and it's like, well, okay, well, on to the next bit. And we have this reporter trying to dig more into Lamont Cranston's homecoming, from his apparently from his maybe 7-8 years abroad. And the butler's not having any of that, but one of the maids there is is kind of conned into talking to the reporter, because the reporter's pretty smart, and says that he seems to be a completely different guy in a lot of ways. And so this of course piques his interest, and then we go to the Cobalt Club, in which we do meet, we see Lamont Cranston meeting Commissioner Weston for the first time, discussing how stupid Volstead is. Of course, the Volstead Act, prohibition, so on and so forth. But it's basically just it's self the whole purpose of the Volstead Act is pretty much self-defeating, and that's just going to create more vice than it's going to cure. So. But he talks a lot about the dispensing of justice in juxtaposition to the law in the moments that he has. And he definitely he comes off really odd, much odder than he's been. And of course, in the Cobalt Club, there's Margot Lane, who looks to be what Matt Wagner seems to be kind of fashioning her into, something of kind of like a society leech. Is that she kind of hangs on to anybody that will provide her with kind of the lavish lifestyle that she's become accustomed to. And she even knows Lamont Cranston from before he left. She met him on a cruise in the Caribbean. And she even points out, and he kind of casts her aside like they've never met. Which, of course, they haven't, because, of course, Lamont Cranston is not really Lamont Cranston. Lamont Cranston is just a man that Kent Allard is pretending to be, because Kent Allard is his own man, and he has his own agenda here, and which is to bring justice to out of injustice. And here's where we have Margot going up to her former gangster lover, basically telling him that she's pregnant. One would assume with his child. And this, instead of this kind of tugging on his heartstrings to get him to maybe, put her up, continue to put her up in, continue to, give her money and whatever she wants, she is going to be taken up to the roof to be thrown off of it. And we see her kind of trying to fight her way out, but then now we are ultimately watching this is Allard, and he decides to take this moment to yank a red, this kind of scarlet tablecloth off a table, and of course, pulls it off in the magician's way, where he pulls it off so fast that nothing on the nothing on the table moves, which I thought was a really nice touch. And then she wraps it around his face and goes up to confront the people about to throw Margot off the roof. And we discover kind of throughout this book that a lot of the inner monologue that we've been hearing is Margot's. She realizes that she's in trouble, but maybe the worst trouble is yet to come. Being introduced to the shadow. While this was a good book, this is very familiar ground that we're treading upon. I mean, this is essentially, anytime that you have the name or the, suffix year one attached to it, thoughts are immediately going to go to Batman year one. And that's what this book really feels like right now, is that this is the beginning of his career as the Shadow. How much we will actually get into, because one of the things, when I read Matt Wagner's, some of the interviews that he gave, I was really looking forward to this because I felt that this would really go a long way towards explaining why Kent Allard became the Shadow, to basically give the origins of the Shadow. Now, Howard Chaykin did it pretty fucking brilliantly in his work, subtitled Blood and Judgment, his 4-issue kind of reboot that he did in 1987, but which is still the best Shadow story to date, at least in comic book form. And but we're not going to get any of that, I don't think. At least not yet. We might get some flashbacks or some explanation as to why, he is who he is. But, barring that, this just feels really very, very familiar ground. There's, Wagner does some really nice character moments, does some really terrific dialogue. He really has the rhythms and the speech of that era. But unfortunately, Wilfredo Torres, who does the art here, his art style is not quite up to snuff. So, again, it's like, you have some of the people that, did the covers to this book. You have Wagner himself. You have you have Alex Ross. You have Chris Samney doing his first cover for a Shadow series, and you have Howard Chaykin, of course. And I just wish that this book was drawn by any one of those other guys, because I would love to see Chris Samney do a Shadow book. Because Torres' art just doesn't quite hit it for me. But it's good. But there's something missing. There's something lacking. There's some nice color work, though. Particularly when you have the people that are kind of being hypnotized, you really see kind of the red in their eyes. Whether it's by, Shadow's famous Durasol ring, or whether it's in this moment that the mobster has in his car. So that was, again, another 3.5 out of 5 for that, but I'm hoping that it can get better. Moving on to Valiant, we have Exo MANOWAR, number 10. So this is Planet Death is kind of the prelude here. Basically, we have Trill, Commander Trill is kind of using Gafty, Eric's old friend, as kind of his bargaining chip, only to find really that Eric is much more knowledgeable about the Shanshara armor than any member of the Vine would have predicted, and does something quite brilliant with it. But Gafty is on death's door, and Eric, of course, has been missing a hand, but Shanshara actually helped to grow it back. So he knows that if he commands Shanshara to envelop Gafty, that he will be, that his mortal wound will be healed and he'll be whole again. But unfortunately for Eric, Gafty has a pretty serious and pretty justified bone to pick with Eric. Because, yes, Eric has been the guy that's made it out. He has been the guy that, he was sort of responsible for what happened. He's always been the guy that seems to kind of get the luck of the draw, and Gafty, just kind of keeps getting the shit end of the stick. But here we have this moment in which, Eric kind of in this very, almost, if you hearken back to, like, the film of Thor, Kenneth Branagh's film, I don't know what other film I'd be talking about, but, we have this very kind of noble, self-sacrificing moment in which Eric basically, says, if killing me is what's going to bring you peace, Gafty, then, go ahead. I always said that you were going to be, one of the great warriors of, the Visigoths. And so this is when Gafty kind of makes, his different decision and his ultimate decision kind of in deference to Eric's nobility and their brotherhood and knowing what he has to do, because the Vine are coming in full force. And so we have this really, just tremendous ending to this issue. But I'll tell you the problem that I had with this book is that we have, the Vine fleet is surrounding the Earth. There are potentially hundreds of warships up there with, thousands upon thousands of, Vine soldiers on board. But we don't really get a sense of how grave this threat is, because we just have some kind of Vendetti just kind of puts some kind of intercut moments of showing the fleet, just outside. And, when Gafty ends up taking them all down, this should be like, a real home run. You really want to feel, oh man, this is, because we get, it's like, even like in, a film like Independence Day, you get a sense of how big, of how grave this threat is. And this just kind of felt like, oh, well, okay, they're here, and now they're gone. So it just felt like they were trying to encapsulate too much of this story into one, in just a couple of pages. And it goes by like that. So, sorry. I'm used to very quiet snapping ever since I broke my finger, so. Anyway. So that really did take this book down a notch, because we don't get like a really good idea of the threat behind this issue. So say a 4 out of 5. And another thing is, like, what the hell happened to Ninjak? I thought that he was kind of going to be, I kind of thought that he was going to be the guy that kind of comes out at the end to kind of, whack Trill. But it ends up being Eric himself, which is better for the book. But I was just wondering, I thought this was going to be kind of a thing, that they were kind of buddy-buddy now. Not buddy-buddies, but they, had respect for each other as warriors, so on and so forth. Anyway, moving on. Harbinger number 9. So this issue belongs to Faith, aka Zephyr, and her life, her rather tragic life as a geek, and how she recounts these moments of her life being almost through these very kind of geekish eyes. And, you know, all sorts of, kind of, geek culture references being made throughout. How her parents died and how she was kind of lifted from the car, like she kind of felt, like the infant Superman was. And, we see pictures of her with her parents, who died in this crash, as, they're dressed all in like Star Wars Next Gen outfits and everything like that, and took a picture together. And the parents have these huge long box collections and everything like that. So they, she's perfectly happy kind of being kind of a fat geek, if you will. And it's one of the things that I found so incredibly endearing about this book, is that it's really Faith's story. Is that no matter all the other crazy shit that's going on, because we have, Tull kind of overseeing this, the kind of the capturing of our renegades, but we have, each character kind of gets their own moment, if you will, but it's really mostly Faith's book. I mean, Chris has an awesome moment here as she kind of, calls out Tull for kind of almost that he's being played by Harada, and then you have Tull himself almost kind of questioning what the remainder of his life, almost in kind of a, like the operative from Serenity, kind of questioning what his life will be like without Peter Stanchek in it. Because, his whole purpose for being right now is kind of, stopping Peter Stanchek. So what will become of him after this? So just, and is Faith going to come to the rescue? Well, you bet your ass she is. Dysart's really, Joshua Dysart, writing this issue, really upping the ante here, giving us, someone who we kind of knew was going to be this, but really are feeling it, is that, Faith is definitely the heart and soul of this group of renegades. She will be its conscience. She will be its, ever-loving, center, if you will, kind of the warm center in which kind of maybe the rest of this group can find some solace in. Because you have a lot of really damaged people that are, that are amongst, the group of renegades here, even though Peter is obviously the most powerful, you have all these other characters that are kind of broken in some way or another, and Faith is the only one who hasn't let all of the horrible shit in her life break her. Her spirit is tremendous, so it's like you just kind of fall in love with Faith in this issue. If you haven't already, you're really in love with her in this issue. And so this issue, just terrific. Pepe Perez's art is really terrific in this issue. This was a really fun, exciting, even though not a lot happens in this issue, we really get some good insight into the character of Faith. And that's, again, a really good core for this book and for this issue. So 4.5 out of 5 to Harbinger number 9. Back to Dynamite and back to Pulpy. We have The Spider number 9. Basically, we have, Richard, he's looking to put the kibosh on the haters' plans, whatever they may be, as he looks to kind of, as, the hater seems to be looking to, stop anybody who's interfering with all of the things that he's doing, because he's, acting kind of peripherally to everything that's going on as far as, Wentworth Industries being kind of taken down by these outside forces that we don't know who they are yet. It's like all these characters, they're all mercs, they're for hire, and they're, it's like one of them is Russian, one of them is American, one of them is French, it's like, all of these people, they shouldn't even really be in the same room together, let alone working together to, bring Wentworth Industries down. And, even more so, this is kind of almost at his, this is kind of still, Richard kind of clearing up the mess of his father. But of course, Nita herself, kind of still finding herself in the crosshairs here, as well as, Commissioner Kirkpatrick. And she is forced to admit to something that she really doesn't want to have to admit to, but, it's either that or Professor Brownlee is going to get it right between the eyes. So again, this was, it's a really good pulse-pounding issue. I mean, David Liss, he writes this book so assuredly. It's so elegantly framed. The art by Ivan Rodriguez, he's definitely kind of building off the visual motif that that Colton Worley helped to establish. I'm still missing Colton Worley on this book, but Ivan Rodriguez, he's stepping up pretty well, I would say. The mystery of who is behind all of this is still very present, and that's one of the things that Liss is doing really well with this book, is that we have kind of this wrap up of this, of him taking down, of Richard taking down the Hater. And Rodriguez, of course, doing some really dynamic art stuff. It's really terrific. Again, not on the same level as Colton Worley, but still really good. And again, just, Liss, dialogue, plot, action, adventure, pulp, good stuff. This is, again, this is definitely, it's kicking the Shadow's ass, kind of, as a book as a whole, because no issue has been bad at all. I mean, all the issues have been like 4 or higher. And this is, just definitely one of those books. It's like, it's almost at my must-read list every week. It's one of the first books I pick up, so. Moving on to DC. So we have Wonder Woman number 17. Wonder Woman 17, holy shit. We basically have this terrific little opening sequence in which Wonder Woman is trying to kind of rehearse what she's going to say to Zola, because she's realizing that her child is potentially going to cause the death of the Olympians. That, this prophecy that they keep speaking of, that the Olympians keep speaking of, is coming from one of Zeus's, kind of, half-breed, whatever you want to call them, children, bastard children that he has all over the place. And of course, there's Lennox and there's Orion. I love Orion in this issue, man. He's awesome. And we have Zola and Hera and Strife and War and Dionysus at the bar. And of course, Zola really not trusting any of them, and rightly so. But because when Wonder Woman actually goes into the hotel room that they're supposed to be at, they're not there. Where the hell did they go? And she kind of blamed this on Lennox, who was supposed to be kind of watching over them, but left to help Diana with what she needed to do. And to help to find out exactly what where Zola's child is. and to enlist more of kind of these kind of cast-off children of Zeus's. But Orion just picks up a hair, and you know, in the midst of this bar, you have this great Tony Akins panel where there's, you know, it's, you know, you have the art behind it, but there's the word boom. It's just, you know, it just kind of covers this panel, and in this, you know, this really dynamic red and white coloring. And it's, of course, Orion has opened a boom tube, and it's because he fed this hair into his little, you know, apocalypse cycle, whatever that you want to call it, and it opened the boom tube to exactly where they would be located. And so we have, you know, War is, you know, about to be stabbed by Zola. He, of course, fights it off, but ultimately it's War that is intending, that wants to bring Diana to help find where Hermes has stowed himself away in Demeter with the child, and, you know, does so in, you know, again, this really cool, you know, kind of, you know, Olympian god fashion, even though it's War. And we have all these great character moments throughout this whole issue with the different, you know, with the different gods, and, you know, with Hera and with Lennox, who Orion calls Lummox at one point in time. And, you know, and Orion basically smacks Diana's ass as she's, you know, about to kind of get going, and it's like, you know, hey, have a good, you know, this kind of like, hey, get on going there, girl. And it was just terrifically awesome moment. It's like, oh my god, Orion just smacked Wonder Woman's ass. That's kind of awesome to who his character is, because he's definitely not kind of the dour, you know, I am Orion, I'm the son of Darkseid, and I can only be serious. I mean, he definitely has more of kind of a joie de vivre in this kind of reinvention of his character, if you will, or in this new take on his character. So I'm really excited about where this book is going. This book was terrific. The art is terrific. Azzarello, like I said, does just some awesome stuff in this issue. This was really, really terrific. You know, we have the Firstborn killing a giant shark with a helicopter, and kind of more information about him, but not too much more, you know, because Poseidon is definitely attacking him, and kind of leaves this kind of neat little cliffhanger moment for him as well, for the Firstborn. It's a really dense and fun and kind of dark issue, especially once we get to, you know, the moments with the Firstborn. Once we get to the end, we're like, oh my god, shit. But just, wow. Good stuff. Really good stuff. 4.5 out of 5 for Wonder Woman number 17. That's not a rating I give out to this book a lot. This was just a terrific, terrific issue. Batwoman number 17. After I was done reading this issue, I thought to myself, really? This is the ending that we got to this kind of epic tale? The book opens extremely well. Very strong opening. There are some terrific, terrific individual moments here, because that's kind of what J.H. Williams and W. Hayden Blackman have done really well throughout their run on this book, is they get a lot of really cool individual moments, but to kind of mush them all together into one story sometimes feels very inorganic. And that is a big part of the problem with this issue, is that we have these cool moments like Hawkfire defeating the monster that, you know, that put the really big hurt on her. You know, we have this moment with Abbott, the werewolf, kind of sacrifice, kind of attacking and not really sacrificing, but, you know, the destruction of Bloody Mary, all, these great moments with Kate and with Diana. And then we get this like Clash of the Titans-esque ending to the story of, to Medusa, where it's like, really, that's all we needed to do. I mean, I'm actually shocked in a way that Kate didn't make some kind of self-referential, or not self-referential, but just some kind of reference to like Harry Hamlin, Clash of the Titans, some kind of Ray Harryhausen joke or something like that, because it was like, really, that's what they used to take her down? This kind of, just turning the, it just, that seemed so kind of hackish. And it was just really like, wow, that just let all of the air out of this epic battle. And, despite, again, some of the cool, some of the really great moments, like, Kate kind of talking Diana out of putting an end to Ceto, mother of all monsters, the delivering back of the children, and then of course the two huge kind of, not, well, one of them is definitely a shock, one of them is just kind of a surprise. But yeah, I mean, it was shocking, absolutely, to have the marriage proposal there. But all in all, I mean, the real shock, of course, was the very ending. Again, Kate's refusal to give over the information to the DEO about Wonder Woman and everything like that. I mean, again, individually, these moments work extremely well. As a whole, and that really kind of, I'll call it a stupid ending to this whole, fight with Medusa, just seems to deflate the epic quality of it. Whether that's intentional or not, to put it down more to kind of a street level type of thing. Maybe that was what Blackman and Williams were going for, but of course the book looks gorgeous. I mean, you cannot deny that Williams's work is always going to be gorgeous, the type of stuff that you just want to just kiss every page of and every panel of, because it looks so great. But they just still are having a problem with storytelling. So this is a very soft 3.5 out of 5, closer to a 3. It just didn't have the impact that I felt that it meant to have. So where they go from here, I don't know, but I think this is Williams' last issue on the book as artist. I think they might be even bringing back Trevor McCarthy after this. I don't know, I can't remember, but I don't know if I'll be sticking around for Batwoman for a whole lot longer. I mean, I love Kate Kane, I love her character, but I want more kind of... I know that Batman is the street level guy, but I want some more of that back. I want Greg Rucka back. That's what I really want. I want Greg Rucka back on Batwoman. But anyway, I won't get that, so we'll let that one go. So now on to the picks of the week, in which there are 3, and I'll tell you, the book of the week was almost fucking impossible to pick, but I will do my, but I thought long and hard about it, and I do have the pick of the week, but again, it's like by a hair, and we'll get into that in a minute. But first, our first runner-up of the week, or second runner-up of the week, whatever you want to call it, is the Black Beetle No Way Out #2. Now, this book, unfortunately, my comic book store has not been getting, because their shipments are all fucked up, and I'm waiting. My guy at the shop, he keeps promising me that he will do what he can to find these issues and get them for me. But I just downloaded them using the Dark Horse application on my tablet and read them on there, and then I don't know if I can actually read them on my computer. I'd like to, because reading it on the tablet, it is kind of, I only have like a 7-inch tablet, but it's worth it, man. Because, just even for this, you do get to at least, you get to pinch to zoom, so you can get to zoom in on all of Francesco Francovilla's glory, because that's what this book is, man. It's, because basically what we have here, we have, Black Beetle, almost called him Blue Beetle, yeah, I know. He's definitely working overtime to try and figure out who in the hell bombed and blew up all of the heads of the New York crime, the Colt City crime families. Who did this? Who has the power to do this? And we have him going through the wreckage, barely escaping from this Alcatraz-like prison that he went to go visit one of the. I have to get into issue #1 to go off of that, and of course there's issue 0 is also kind of involved here with the Nazi werewolf corps that he gets some of his gear from. But again, Black Beetle just really being a guy that is prepared for everything, because when he says he says kind of even if I don't need it, I usually kind of end up needing it. And so, he works his way out of, kind of the jam that he's in with the cops, and gets to relative safety to re-explore the explosion site. And he's digging around for clues and everything like that. And he's, find, all these rats and everything like that in this big, kind of runoff from, this water runoff from underneath the building. And he is pushed into amongst all these rats by this very strangely costumed fiend who we know as Labrinto. And he is definitely a villain, and seems to be the one responsible for this explosion. What his endgame is, we don't know. Presumably, probably to take over organized crime, but he definitely wants the Black Beetle out of the way. And Black Beetle, of course, uses ingenuity to get out of it. And he's just, oh, God. Just Francavilla furthering his case that he should be pretty much, that Dynamite should get like some kind of exclusive contract with him for him to write and draw all of their pulp books. Almost all of them. I would love to see Francavilla on the Shadow. Love to see Francavilla on the Shadow. And hopefully someday we will get that. But right now, while he's doing Black Beetle, it doesn't really matter, because he is doing an awesome job of both writing and doing the art for this great new pulp hero. I love the Black Beetle. This is a really awesome book, and if you're not getting it, and if you love pulp, even if you just like good comic book storytelling, you're missing out if you're missing Black Beetle. This is an absolute 5 out of 5, and of course, Francavilla's art is almost like, it's, especially in this kind of pulp mode, it's you just want to, again, every page you just want on your wall. I mean, it's just like I want to print them out using like super color, you know, like photo paper and stuff like that, and just hang it up because it's just so gorgeous to look at. And I mean, Francavilla, he's really, really making a name for himself right now, and I think you'd be hard pressed to find a cooler pulp book out there right now, maybe with the exception of the Spider, than what Francavilla is doing on Black Beetle, No Way Out, #2. Again, absolute 5 out of 5. So now this is where we get to our 2 books that I almost had to flip a coin. Runner-up, Saga #10. You know, I put on Twitter the other day that Brian K. Vaughan better watch out, because I'm ready to hurt him emotionally because of how he emotionally hurt me in this issue. But what an issue. What an issue. My God. I mean, just great opening. Devastating ending. And of course, everything in the middle is pretty fucking brilliant too. I mean, from, you know, the beginnings of kind of Marco and Alana's relationship, you know, I mean, just the reaction shot that Fiona Staples draws of Alana as she's kind of reading the romance novel, and you know, and he's, you know, shirtless and he's all sweaty and everything like that, and, you know, just, she's like, huh? You know, because she's obviously like, this dude's pretty hot, man. And just, you know, kind of the subtext of the book, and, you know, of course, you know, like I said, the real kind of beginning of their relationship, their love affair. You know, then on the planet, you know, the midwives, you know, the upside down heads, and you know, Marco and his mother, and you know, the reappearance of Isabel as a huge gorilla giving them the finger. So awesome, so awesome. And, you know, we get, you know, Hazel getting her belly button. I mean, it's like, and you know, Alana kind of freaking out about that. You know, it's like, I think I broke her. Just, I mean, all of these incredibly endearing moments, and then we get to the planet hatching, and I'm just like, oh shit. And then Gwendolyn's really, really epically stupid move, and Alana's brilliant counter move. And then we have the ending. Fix this, Vaughn. Fix it. Do not let this happen. I know some of you out there haven't read this yet, but those of you who have, you know what the fuck I'm talking about. And I'm talking mostly to Ghost Critic on this one because I know that he hasn't read this issue yet, because he did not do a review of it in his last week's review column, which I was really shocked as to why he did. But I understood why Mark couldn't get that. He couldn't get all his books last week. So anyway. Oh, I mean, this issue, I don't know if this is my favorite issue so far. issue number 4 on Sextillion kind of has my heart for right now as the best, but this is definitely one of the bests. And this may have a place at the end of the year for one of the great issues of this year. Because, I mean, oh God. I mean, I'm telling you, Vaughn, watch your step, because I want to write hurtful things to you. I want to write you things that will make you feel sad and broken inside. Because you're a mean man. If what has happened happened. Absolute, total 5 out of 5 for Saga number 10. Which brings us to our book of the week. Again, this is a really hard decision between Saga and this book, but when it came down to it, this was the book that is going to stay with me. Daredevil, number 23. We have Wade again creating another perfect jumping on point for new readers. And I know this has been done a couple of times, or at least been done once already. The point in one issue was a really solid jumping on point, but this again is another perfect jumping on point that also happens to be a breathtakingly perfect issue of comics. I mean, the opening itself is wonderfully set up with this, what we think we're seeing is Matt reliving the moment in which he lost his sight. There is something much darker at work here. But then we shift from that opening, this amazing opening, to this wonderful, wonderful moment between Foggy and Matt. As Foggy has to go in the morning to the doctor to get the results of his biopsy, his tests back. Because the signs are indicating that it could be cancer, but it might not be. They're really, and Matt is doing everything he can to try and cheer him up. And so he's taking him, through a swing through the city. And, as he comments on Foggy being made of gravity. And just, how terrified Foggy is and how much fun Foggy is having, kind of living on the edge here for a bit. And we have this great moment in which we do see Matt kind of discussing kind of what's going on with him. Not trying to make it that much about him, but I think Foggy also needs a bit of a distraction. And Matt's just really trying to piece together who is behind everything of late, because all of these various villains that he's fought for a while, past post kind of mega crime with particularly with Coyote, someone who really seemed to be hired to drive, to make Matt Murdock seem like he's insane again. Who is behind that? Who knows Matt Murdock that well? There's a brilliant shared joke that, of course, harkens back to a bit from Born Again. Just that joke is like it's alternately hilarious and kind of, but just kind of remembering what brought that line out kind of makes it even more funny. Is that this is it's like the lowest point of Matt's life ever, and or certainly one of them, because there have been so many low points in Matt Murdock's life. But then as Matt has to encounter a threat that speaks very clearly as to who Matt Murdock is, as he comes in on this group of men who are running wild through this banquet hall in this fancy hotel that are eating and smelling and licking and feeling everything and everyone in sight, and just causing just mass just causing mass havoc. And Matt picks up this scent, and he doesn't quite remember it at first, but of course as he goes along he starts to recognize it much more clearly, as these men are tainted with the chemical that gave him his hypersenses. And so again, this cuts very much to the quick of somebody out there knows who exactly Matt Murdock is, and that he is Daredevil, and what actually made him. So that's an even bigger mystery. Who is behind all of this? And then we have Matt does arrive just in time. It's just as we think that he's going to fuck it up. He does arrive just in time to be with Foggy as he goes to see the doctor to get his results. And this scene is played with a mastery that you very, very seldom see. It's hard. And this was something that Ghost Critic himself had said. Anybody who knows someone with cancer, who has lost someone to cancer, they know this feeling. They know that feeling of getting that news. And there's no words that you can say that can express this. So Wade and Samney choose to do it entirely through art. And it is just utterly... I mean, I feel kind of like it right now, but I was crying at the end of this issue. Not sobbing, but I was definitely... There were tears rolling down my face. I mean, my God, what an ending. What an issue. I mean, it hurts that this is going on. And the fact that Wade is smart enough to not use this as something cheap, something gimmicky, and that he handles it with the necessary gravity that it deserves, and with the natural, with the realism that a moment like this deserves. Because as we all know, pretty much all of us, we've been touched by this monster, this fucking aberration, and we all hate it. And so, because we know it's no fucking laughing matter, this is not something that you can just say, oh, well, you know, this is just a comic book. It's not. And And it hurts. It hurts inside when you read it, and when you're especially reading about a character that has, 40 odd years of history that you've been reading throughout the years, that you've loved. Because who doesn't love Foggy Nelson? I mean, you're a fucking prick if you don't love Foggy Nelson. Okay, you're not a fucking prick, but if you read Daredevil and you love Daredevil, then you love Foggy Nelson. Okay, let's just be clear about that. There's people out there that don't love Foggy Nelson, and you're not fucking pricks. But if you're reading Daredevil, you love Foggy Nelson, or you're a fucking prick. This I would give an absolutely perfect 5 out of 5 too, because this is one of those issues, like issue number 7, which is a perfect balance of this incredibly heartwarming, heartbreaking story and a terrific issue of Daredevil. A terrific issue for these characters. Just Samney, Mark Waid, telling you, man, you deserve those Eisners. And you deserve those Harveys too. You deserve every accolade. I mean, just this issue alone deserves lots and lots of accolades. This is probably one of the best issues I've read so far this year. And there have been some really good issues this year. I mean, this is up there with like Batman number 14. I mean, just a masterpiece of comic books. So that's it. We're done this week. We reached pretty late here. We're at 146, closing in on 147 very rapidly here. I want to thank you again for taking the time out of your day or your evening to watch. I know that these are long, but hey, it's new comics, bitches! So you know it's going to be long. And if you've been around for the ride, which a lot of you have, then you know what I is saying. I'm not going to get a whole lot of new subscribers, I don't think, anytime in the near future, but for the ones that I've got now, you are tried and true, and I love you all. So let's keep the comments coming. Like it, don't like it, tell me why you don't like it. I mistakenly put, I did put a response, and this was just not totally off the cuff. It was something that I had been thinking about for a while. The whole Orson Scott Card thing. I did, under my Donnelly92274 YouTube account, put a response video up to Damien, Sleepy Reader 666's video on why he will be purchasing Orson Scott Card Superman. So if you haven't seen that, check it out. I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. A lot of you have responded to it. Which is good, because feedback, that's what it's all about. So leave some here, right down there, comments. There's a whole section for it. I'm not kidding, it's right down there. And again, thank you again so much for watching. It's been a pleasure talking to you, or talking at you, if you will. No, I talk to you. I like to think of this as, it's not just a monologue, it is a two-way conversation, because eventually you do give me feedback. And just by watching, you are participating. So for that, again, I thank you. And thank you again for watching this week's New Comics, bitches. And stop by next week for some more, because I will have more. You can always count on that. So this week, thankfully a light week, so maybe next week won't be, almost 2 hours in length. Or if you go back to last week, the entirety of it was over 3 hours in length, even though it split into 2. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. You're great. I love you all. and let's keep on keeping on. I can't do my kind of standard visual sign-off, so I will just say it. Thank you for watching. This has been The Shadow Gallery. I have been your host, James Donnelly, and I'm here to remind you, as always, to stay in the shadows.